Hey everybody, Joel Kennedy with Kennedy Violins. So today I'm doing a play along, and the play along song is the Two Grenadiers from Suzuki Book 2. So remember, every week I'm doing a play along as well as other videos, and I'm throwing a dart at the board behind me, and the board, the universe, decides what the next piece of music is going to be. So today it's the Two Grenadiers. Okay, so I'm going to play through it, then I'm going to play through it with the metronome, and then I'm going to talk about a few things to help you play it successfully. Okay, so now I will play it with the metronome. Okay, so I've got the metronome on 115, so that means every beat that goes by is a quarter note, okay? And we are in common time, which means 4 beats in a measure, and the quarter note gets the beat. 2, 3, rest, piano, 2, 3, crescendo, forte, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so remember, whenever we learn a new piece, we always want to map everything out, right? So we want to figure out things like our time signature, our key signature, our dynamics, our bowings, where do we want to be in the bow, what is our articulation, what is our tempo, what fingerings do we want to use, what bowings do we want to use, and we want to write those in so we're consistent. So I'm using the Suzuki Book, and yeah, so all the bowings and fingerings are already there, and I'm basically just doing the ones that are printed, and I'm doing the easiest fingerings possible, so this is applicable to the widest audience, okay? So, first of all, let's look at the key signature. The key signature is F major, which means that we have 1 flat. So our flat is B flat, okay? And we can see that in the left-hand side of the staff, as usual. Okay, so what does B flat mean for our left hand? Well, it means low first finger on the E string. That's our F natural. Okay, so we want to make sure our first finger is touching the nut of the violin. That's a pretty good indicator that our finger is probably in the right spot. And then we're going to have low first finger low first finger on the A, that's going to be our B flat, right? Again, touch the nut on the violin. Okay, and then we're going to have low second finger on the D string, right? That's another F natural, D, E, F, right? If it was F sharp, it'd be high second finger, right? Okay, and then on the G string, we would have low 2, right? But I don't believe we have any of those B's in here. If it was B natural, it'd be, right? Okay, so now if we continue through the piece, we see that there's a double bar on the 5th line from the bottom in the middle of it, and we have a key change. So we go from F major to D major, which means that we have F sharp, C sharp, okay? And you notice they've got the little natural sign there. That's just reminding you, oh, by the way, that B flat is not going to be B flat anymore. It's going to be natural, okay? So we have 2 sharps. So now that low 1 on our A, that low 1 on our E, that low 2 on our D, and the low 2 on our G are no longer low, right? So now we're going to have those fingers be in the natural position, with the exception of the first. Now, I don't want to say natural position because the first finger on the E is technically that's not the natural position for it. So our first finger on the E is going to be in the same place it is on all the other strings, right? That's an F sharp. Okay, and then we have C sharp, which means that we have high 2 on the A string, right? Which means that 2 would touch our 3rd finger, right? Here's a low 2, here's a high 2. C natural, C sharp. Okay, good. And there's other places, other notes as well, but they're not in this piece in terms of the lower part of the violin, so we won't talk about those. But F sharp, C sharp. Okay, so moving on. We have the time signature. Okay, so time signature is common time, as indicated by that C, which means 4/4, right? 4 beats a measure, quarter note gets the beat. Okay, now we have some dynamics that we can talk about a little bit. So we start it at mezzo forte, which means medium loud, right? And then we have those little alligators in there, right? So in the beginning, we have one that goes like this, and then we have one that goes like this, right? So we're starting out softly, then we're getting louder, and then we're going quiet again. Now, you'll see those little indications, those dynamic indications, are all over the place. So they occur in the 3rd full measure, into the 4th full measure. Okay, they're in the 2nd line, they're in the 3rd line, okay, they're in the 5th line from the bottom, the 4th line from the bottom, they're in the 2nd to last line from the bottom, they're in the last line, so they're all over the place. So not only do these kind of indicate dynamics, but they also indicate the direction of your phrase. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so that's our dynamics. We also have a forte in the moderato section. We have crescendos. We have a double forte at the end, so that's going to be as loud as we can play, all right, without scaring the cat or making the dogs howl. Okay, and then we have some articulation that's a little bit interesting. So we have some dotted rhythms, for example. In the più mosso, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. Actually, no, it occurs in the 3rd line first. So in the 3rd line of the piece, 3rd measure in that agitato, we have. Okay, so we have a dot. So the first note has a dot on the side of it, which indicates that that's a beat and a half, right? But the next note, that B flat 8th note, actually has the dot on top of the note. So that's going to indicate that the note is short, okay? So just remember, one dot indicates length of note or quality of note. The other one indicates the length, the length of your articulation. Not the metered length, but the length of how you play it. I guess that's clear, I don't know. Anyway, so the first B flat is going to be a beat and a half, and then the 8th note that it's tied to is going to be an 8th note, but there's a dot on it, so we want to play it short. All right, that was a very long explanation to say play it short. Okay. All right. So then we have that figure. It happens all the time, right? It happens in the fourth line, all over the place. Okay. So then we also have another dotted rhythm occur in the third line from the bottom. So. Right? Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. Okay, so we'll work in reverse a little bit and we'll talk about our articulation and how to do that. And then maybe we'll talk about some other stuff. Okay, so we have these dotted rhythms. I like teaching this piece because this is a very good technique for you to learn. So how do you play a short note when it's tied to another note? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. Stop your bow. So if we are in the third line, right? Third measure in the agitato section. It's a piano, okay? Now we have that B flat dotted quarter that's tied to that B flat eighth. So you want to make sure that even though it's tied, you stop your bow before that eighth note completely to make sure that that eighth note is short. It comes up again, stop, stop, right? And then up again, stop, 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 right? So every time you have that dotted rhythm that's tied, you want to make sure you stop your bow. Okay, so then going on, we have the same thing occurring, the third line from the bottom, third measure in, a dotted rhythm again. So now we have a dotted eighth note, right, just an eighth and a 16th, tied to a 16th. That's that F sharp. So even though that F sharp, that first finger, is tied, we're still going to stop the bow because that dot on the 16th note is above the note, which means it's short, which means that we're going to have to stop our bow. So if I play that section, right? Okay, and then at the end, it's kind of a march almost. It's kind of really in your face, so we want to be very kind of blocky about how we play it. Okay, so that's the articulation. So now let's talk about dynamics a little bit. Okay, so the dynamics are fairly simple, but what I really want to focus on a little bit with the dynamics, because they're pretty self-explanatory. Mezzo forte, forte, piano, double forte, right? So we probably all know what that means, but we have these little alligators. And so what they're doing is that they're kind of indicating the direction of the phrase. So in the beginning, we have, okay, but we have those little alligators there. So what are they telling us? They're telling us that the phrase goes to that F natural, that low first finger on the E string. Da, dee, dun, da, 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 and then it backs up. And then it happens again. Dun, 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 da, 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 dun, right? So every time we have those, not every time, but most of the time, you can think about those little alligators as telling you the direction of the phrase. So for example, in the moderato 5 lines from the bottom, in the moderato section, we see that it's loudest, or it occurs, it's loudest on that third finger on the E string, right? So we want to go towards that note. Right? Da 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 dee da dum. Right? We wouldn't want to do. That'd be boring and lame, right? We want to have directions. So we want to set up that third finger to really speak with our notes. If you think about every note speaking to your audience, you know, you're telling a story, you're speaking with sound, then a lot of the stuff comes naturally and it just makes sense. Okay, so that would be the dynamics. Okay, so now we already talked about the time signature, we already talked about the key signature. Yeah, that's pretty much it as far as articulation and all that other stuff. So now I'll just play through it a little bit and then repeat those things that I just talked about while I play it so you can see it in action. So from the beginning, mezzo forte. Remember, we're going towards that first finger. Diminuendo. Build again. Diminuendo. Okay, so there we have a down, down. So that's called a retake or a circle bow. Okay, so there you want to make sure that you're at the lower part of the bow to make that a lot easier. If you're at the tip of the bow, it won't work, you know. So that's crazy, right? So that means you plan ahead. That's that planning ahead I'm talking about. So see how easy it is? So if you're at the frog, then it's a piece of cake to do that retake. So you don't want to lift like a giant, just a little, right? It's really easy. Then you use that half note to get to the upper part of your bow. Why? Because now we have a piano section coming up, and it's easiest to play piano at the tip of the bow because that's where the least amount of weight is in the bow. So remember, you plan all these out. So to the tip, 2, 3. Okay, so that one is going to be a little bit more of a difficult retake because you're not going to be at the frog. You're going to be more in the middle of the bow. But as long as you're not too high, it's not too hard. 2, 3. Crescendo. Crescendo. Whoops. Retard. And retard generally means to slow down, and it usually means to get quieter as well. Whereas an allegando, it's late. Allegando at the end, see that at the very end of the piece it says A-L-L-A-R-G, and allegando generally will mean that you'll slow down, but not necessarily get quieter. So usually a retard or a rallentando or something like that is usually associated with getting slower and getting quieter. And retards are generally associated with the end of a piece a lot of the time, whereas a rallentando is maybe you're slowing down to a different section. But they're usually used interchangeably. Okay, so going back. Okay, so we have that retard. Then, now we have a forte going to a double forte in this moderato section, right? We know that we want to play forte, and then we know we've got to save a little bit for that double forte that's coming up at the end. But you know what? It's on the E string, and the E string usually seems pretty loud because it's a piercing string, so you don't have to really try that hard to make it seem louder, okay? And it kind of is louder in a way, just because the E string carries better than the G string. Okay? So now we've got the moderato section, and we've got a key change, and we want to use big bows because it's a forte, and these notes are pretty much, you know, I don't want to say they're legato, but, you know, close to it. So now that D, we do have a legato line over it. So they are indicating, make sure that's a long note. So then go towards the third finger. Stop. Now, double forte. Break. Okay, so that is the Two Grenadiers in Suzuki Book 2. Okay, so now let's throw the dart. Let's throw the dart and find out what our piece will be for next week. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button because I'm going to be doing this a lot if you're interested. Okay, here's our dart. I can't talk today. I have no idea why. Okay, here we go. We're gonna throw the dart hard and hopefully it'll stick to something. Okay, Suzuki Book 2 Minuet. Okay, Suzuki Book 2 Minuet. So there we go. So if you're interested in following along next week, we're going to be doing Suzuki Book 2 Minuet. Now I have Suzuki Book 1 through 5 on that dartboard. So if you're interested in the more advanced pieces, they will be coming up. It's just up to the universe when we do those. But eventually we're going to run, because I scratch them out every time we do one. So eventually we're going to run out of scratched pieces, and I'm going to have to, they're going to be more advanced ones if it goes that way. And then if I run out a bunch of those, I'll be putting some other songs on the board. And if you guys have any suggestions or of some other books or whatever, just let me know and maybe I'll put those on the board. Okay, with that, we're going to call it a video and we'll talk to you guys a little later. Happy practicing.